So now we had one full and an intense week of business improvisation in which we had different highly interactive online sessions combining arts, science, and business of improvisation. And in this week we have 15 interviews that most of them I conducted, but now it's about my session, my interview, so I thought it would be interesting to have a flipped interview. So 3 of the participants accepted the invitation that they will interview me, and I'm now the interviewee. So I'm really curious about your questions and about my answers that I do not know yet. And we will start with the interview with Maria, Daniel, and Gernot. So I'm open for your questions right away.
Great. So hi, Lukas. Most of the group and of this course, we know you already very well, but maybe the rest of the audience is also very keen to get some overview about your professionalism and to know something like a kind of an introduction. And at the same time, I want to ask you, what's improvisation for you? What's the meaning of improvisation in the professional context for yourself?
Okay, thank you for the question. So yes, my name is Lukas and I am an assistant professor for innovation and network research at Danube University, Krems. And in this job, I combine teaching and research, and most of the project that I have is about complex problem solving and innovation, and also improvisation. So last year we started a new project that lasts 3 years, and we will try to find out what improvisation means, what skills you can learn in a professional context. Now, if you ask me what is improvisation, I would have many different answers. But normally I start with the word as such. So what is improvisation? It comes from the word improvisus, and that means visus is to see, provisus means to foresee, and im means to not foresee or to unforeseen. So I would say improvisation is to deal with the unforeseen or with unexpected situations. And I would add one more thing. It's about the dimension, the time, and the novelty. So this is normally my metrics that I show. So if I think of something that is not new and you have a lot of time, I would call it tradition. It's stable over time. Now, if you have less time, but nothing new comes into the world, I would rather think of a process that has to be fast, but not new. Now, when we switch now in this matrix to the novelty, saying like, how can the new come into the world regarding creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, and you have a lot of time, I would call that a composition. So you compose something. For example, you create a new piece of music or a product or whatsoever. Now, if you do not have a lot of time and you have to act in the here and now, this is what I call improvisation. So improvisation to me is to deal with the unforeseen in a creative way, or there are some words like real-time creativity or acting impromptu or ad hoc or thinking on your feet. So when you do not have a lot of time to plan, but to execute at the same time. This is what you do, for example, in improv theater, in jazz, or sometimes also in innovation.
So that means, at least from your perspective, improvisers are typically very fast in reacting, right?
Improvisers who improvise, yes. because you're not always improvising. That is too much. You need planning phases and you need sometimes improvisation phases. But yes, I would say if you improvise, you have to be fast, or at least you have to be in the here and now. So I also know, for example, in improv theater, colleagues who say they're slow improvisers. What they mean by that is that they see some kind of situation on stage, and then they take time and try to perceive what is there, and then say, wait, I think I see that. Oh, I see that, and so on. And then something new emerges. They would not say they're fast, rather slow, but they're still in the here and now. But overall, yes, I would rather say it's about being rather fast than slow.
Okay, so let me ask you one last question before I hand over to the next interviewer. You mentioned already an interface between improvisation and innovation. So is there any other scientific discipline which you would foresee to be predestinated to be connected with improvisation?
So to me, improvisation is more or less a core function, or one kind of action. Like planning is one action and improvising in another action or human behavior. So you can apply improvisation in various disciplines. It is obvious to use it in innovation because you want to create something new, but you do not always have to improvise to innovate. But there are many other disciplines in which you can use that. So from an academic point of view, you would think of cognitive science, for example, to better understand how people think and perceive the world while improvising. You can use psychology, sociology, or you can use management science, saying like, how do you plan as an individual or an organization, and when do you have to improvise, in which situations? And you can go beyond university and say, like, in which professions do you really need improvisation? Like in emergencies for doctors, nurses, police, but also in sports. If you think of soccer, think about a scripted soccer game. So everyone exactly knows what will happen next. I think it would be really boring and you would not watch it all over again. So in sports, you're very often improvising. Now, if you extend that, you suddenly see, wait a minute, what is not improvisation? Because most of our behavior and actions is improvised and you do not follow a clear script. You start scripting if there's a high stake. For example, if you present something and it's of importance, you start writing it down because it's, it's so much anxiety and you want to perform well. But most of the time we're improvising. Now, the other question would be, when do you not improvise? And that's also an interesting question.
Well, thank you very much. It was a very good example with the sports, because that's exactly the opposite, or the difference between boxing and wrestling. Because in wrestling they have a script, obviously, and they have less viewers. So thanks a lot for that.
You're welcome.
Now it's my turn, Gernot here. Catchwords and phrases of what's improvisation, what's innovation. So what are the similarities of business improvisation and innovation in organizations, corporates, and how they are connected?
So many people and organizations understand innovation very differently. So some people say innovation is a clear process. The first process is to ideate, and the second is to select regarding specific criteria, and so on. So they have a very linear view of innovation. And I do not think that this is the main idea of innovation from my perspective. For me, innovation and creating new ideas is much more an improvised way. So you perhaps have one idea, but then you forget about that. And then you find something else and you start doing more about that. And then there's there's a person who gives you some ideas, and then there's a technology you could use. So you start building up your ideas, you try it out, and over time, sometimes something emerges that you afterwards label as innovation, and sometimes not. Now, this is much more difficult to understand because it's not a clear process, and you do not have key performance indicators. So I think that it's easy to think like the clear plan. But I think if you have a very detailed view on innovation in organizations, you will see that it's more something that is built up over time. And so I think the newer innovation methods have that already in their concept. For example, design thinking. You're prototyping, so you just have the first idea, and then you ideate something, and then you give it back, and then the next person comes, and then you try to understand the client, and you build it up. In lean startup, you have this idea of having the first idea, a hypothesis, you test it, and then you have this iterative cycles. Effectuation, so how do entrepreneurs think and behave. It's also some kind of loops and interactions. So I would say improvisation is closer to the process of innovation than this clear ideal plan that typically is not realistic from my point of view.
So that leads me to my second question. So what would you recommend to break up those classical innovation processes in grown organizations? So most people don't work in startups or are not familiar with agile methods. So what do you recommend to start the first small steps in a classical project or operational organizations?
I think you already gave the answer in your question, the small steps. So what is the one thing that you can do? So sometimes people talk about the freedom inside the structure. So there is a structure in organizations, and it's hard to break them. But sometimes you spot little niches in which you can innovate. Not the big thing, and not the complete new product, but you can innovate something. You can make something better. You can make it different. And I think you can start with that. And even before, I would ask, do you want to innovate? Because all people say innovation, but there are many organizations that do not want to innovate in a general sense. And it's okay for them to have their routines and processes. So the first question is, do you want to innovate? If you want to innovate, start with the small steps. What can you do differently? How can you motivate people to think a bit differently, to create something new that you didn't do before? And while doing that, you will see that some processes are not helpful. So if you have just the 40 hours and you have the exact clear plan what to do, well, don't expect that something new comes up. You need some spaces in which you can try out new things. And all the big companies that really innovate give these spaces to create something new, to try out something, and to allow failures inside the organization. And if organizations say like, well, we do not want to have any failures, we do not want to experiment, we do not have enough time to create something, well, don't expect that some kind of innovation will emerge over time.
So thanks for your insight and experience. And now I would handle to Maria.
Thanks.
Hello, Lukas. Thank
Hello.
you, Gernot. Well, my question is a two-sided question. And on the one hand, I was wondering, what are the skills that you plan to train in this session? Like, how are you going to train us, or what are the skills that you want us to take home or to take to work? And that's the second part of the questions. How do you think these skills can be applied in a professional way? I mean, you have already mentioned psychology, but maybe you can go a little bit more into detail. Yeah.
Thank you. So I still do not know exactly what kind of skills are necessary to improvise. But there's some that seem to be pretty obvious. I mean, like creative skills, meaning to ideate, to create new ideas on the spot. I think this is one skill that is really needed to improvise in the here and now. In psychology, it is called cognitive flexibility. So if something does not work, that you can switch and create something new. It's very closely connected to creativity as well. Spontaneity, so that you're in the here and now, to use the resources at hand. And then all the collaborative skills, because I think that creativity and innovation is not something that an individual should have or need. It's also an environmental approach. And that means, how do you connect with other people? And connecting meaning that you're listening. So what do people say or clients say? To understand that. In jazz, they say deep listening. So you not only hear what you can hear, but what is underlying that. What do they say without saying that? In design thinking, you have that, for example, in the process. So ask what the clients want, and then think like, what do they want but didn't tell you? This is some kind of collaboration. And give some parts from you, but building on the other. So this is an improv theater, what they call yes and. So you accept an offer. And this is very different than in normal life, in which we say, no, it's better not, and let's see, and stay safe. Rather say, yes, interesting. And I will give something from me to that. And then the other person comes in. And then you have these small steps, you have these sprints, you have the iterative cycles that are all the skills that you can learn in improvisation. And if you have to deal with the unforeseen, it is often scary. You do not know what will happen. You do not know what to expect. Now you have to understand, how do I deal with this anxiety? And the better you can deal with that, the more risky you can be in your thoughts and in your behavior. So I think these are some of the skills that are interesting or even necessary for improvisation. And for this session, I tried to, as one of the best improvisers worldwide from various different contexts, to give you sessions, because I do not know what kind of context is most appropriate for you. So there are some people from business, there are some people from arts, there are people from science, there are men and women, there are people from different cultures. And so the only thing that I hope is that if there's a big set of people and ideas and mindsets, that some of them will resonate with you, and you will say at least, well, this is the one thing or two things that helps me to create something new. And my hope is that on Monday, if you go back to your organization, some of these ideas will stick into your mind, and you perhaps are inspired to try out new things. And if you do that, I did my little job here. Because if you try out things, if you accept little failures, then I think you are already on the path towards improvisation.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask you a follow-up question. Do you think this, not only for your session, but also to maybe reflect on the whole week, do you think these skills are transferable also online? I know you've hosted this course many times in presence, and yeah, I mean, what are the constraints of teaching online? How do you see it? How do you evaluate it?
So I think it is not possible, and it was really a waste of time. um, but in fact, I didn't know. So 3 months ago, I planned a physical workshop, and then Corona happened, and my colleagues said like, "Oh, that's a pity. So we have to say that the participants that there is no course in improvisation." I said, wait, no. We have to offer that because it's improvisation. It's about unforeseen. I mean, how stupid would that be if we talk about expect the unexpected and be prepared for unexpected situation? But if it happened, then we leave. So for me, it was a must to try it out. But I didn't know how. So I invited two of the colleagues that also gave the session, asked like, okay, how should we do that? What is your idea to collaborate on that? And we started to think about that. And Kat Coppett, you already know her, told me, Lukas, that's so interesting. I'm not the online person, but I did some online workshops, and most of the things you can do online. And I said, really? But I mean, how? Like the word by word store, how you do that? Like, come on, Lukas, you say a word and then the other person say a word just online. And yeah, okay, I understand that. But how do you, the clap circle, for example? So you clap to another person and this person clap towards. No, just think of a virtual ball and you throw it to the other person. Okay. So we created the essence, what you learn in a physical workshop, and translate it to an online one. And it is not just copy paste. It's, I think, understanding what do you learn if you do improvisation exercises, like the creative skills and connecting. And you have to change that for the online version, but you can do that. And I think in this week, we experienced many wonderful situations in which you can even felt awareness or concentration or look into the eyes of the others, although you're just staring to the monitor. But for me, it felt like you have a similar experience, not the same, but a similar one. So after this week, I would say, yes, it's possible to have online courses. They're different and in some ways even better. Because some of the lectures I could not just fly in from US and UK and Germany and Portugal, but it's easy online. And everyone agreed and said yes after 2 days. So yes, I think it's really possible to teach online as well.